bank account and seeing a huge boost, a payment, like really substantial. We're talking thousands of dollars here, a big lump sum payment that's actually hitting accounts right now.
Yeah, it's not just talk. It's really happening.
Exactly. This isn't some, far-off dream. It's the confirmed reality for millions, literally millions, of Social Security beneficiaries across the country.
Right.
You might be hearing things like retroactive payments, maybe even double payments in a way, because it's this large accumulated sum.
Right, like a catch-up.
Yeah, catch-up.
Yeah.
And the main message is clear. It means more benefit, more money, delivered directly to people.
It really is a remarkable moment, a very tangible injection of funds for a lot of households.
For sure.
And what's happening, it's a direct result of, recent legislative action. It was designed specifically to fix some long-standing provisions that had, frankly, for years, reduced the earned benefits of certain groups.
Yeah, okay, so it's correcting something?
Precisely. And this isn't just about, future monthly checks getting a bit bigger. It's about a significant, often one-time catch-up payment. It provides a really crucial financial uplift for those affected.
Absolutely. So today we're doing one of our deep dives. We're looking into the Social Security Fairness Act. Sounds pretty powerful.
It is.
And the incredible direct financial benefits it's delivering right now to millions of Americans. Our mission, really, is to unpack exactly what these payments are all about, who's getting them, and what does this all mean for your financial well-being, and maybe even the bigger picture for Social Security. We give you that shortcut to being informed.
Yeah, cut through the noise. We've really dug into the recent confirmations. We've looked at statements directly from the Social Security Acting Commissioner, Frank Basignano.
Okay.
And we've gone through detailed reports that outline the, meticulous rollout of these pretty significant funds. Our approach was really to distill the most critical nuggets of knowledge from all that.
And our focus today, let's be clear, it's squarely on the positive financial outcomes. Like how much more money are people actually getting?
Right, the dollar amount.
What are the core benefits this act unlocks?
Right.
And what does it tell us about Social Security's commitment, its dedication to its beneficiaries?
We're zooming in on those tangible gains, the real financial advantages.
Yeah, and what that means for your peace of mind, your financial security. This deep dive is really all about the good news here, the financial uplift, and seeing the system actually working to deliver more for the people who depend on it.
Definitely a positive story to tell.
Okay, so let's really unpack this. It was confirmed just recently, you said, by Acting Commissioner Frank Basignano.
That's right, confirmed.
That substantial retroactive payments are actively, like right now, being deposited into bank accounts.
As we speak, yes.
We're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. It's a real, immediate financial boost for millions. This isn't just a promise on paper, right? It's money making a difference.
A palpable difference, absolutely. And what's genuinely fascinating here, I think, is the sheer scale of the financial impact for the individuals getting these payments.
Yeah. How much are we talking?
Well, the average payment hitting bank accounts is a remarkable $6,710.
Wow. $6,700. Average.
Average. Just think about that for a second. For many, many people, that amount is more than a month's income. Maybe several months for some.
Easily.
It's a significant lump sum. It can really alleviate pressing financial pressure, maybe cover unexpected costs like a medical bill or a car repair.
Could provide cushion, right?
Exactly. A much-needed financial cushion for the future. It's a substantial amount, and it can truly enhance someone's financial stability. It gives them a profound sense of relief, I imagine.
Oh, I bet. Freedom from those immediate worries.
Yes.
That's a true game changer for so many. And you mentioned the retroactive aspect. That really seems key here.
It is key.
These aren't just like future payments getting a little bump. These are back payments.
That's right. They cover prior periods. Benefits that, because of the old rules, were either cut back or maybe completely withheld in some cases.
So it's delivering this lump sum that instantly boosts financial stability.
Instantly.
I'm thinking of like maybe a retired teacher. Let's call her Sarah. She's been budgeting carefully for years, right?
Like many public servants.
And suddenly, boom, this payment lands in her account. It represents years of benefits that were previously reduced. For her, that's not just a bonus check.
No, or not at all.
It's like finding money she earned, money that was rightfully hers, suddenly appearing. That must be a powerful feeling.
It's validation. a powerful feeling of financial uplift and validation of the benefits they actually earned through their work. It's a direct correction of those past calculations,
Right.
leading to this large one-time influx of cash that people can use immediately to significantly improve their situation.
And you said $6,710 the average.
Yes, the average. It's important to remember that. Some beneficiaries, depending on their specific work history and how long their benefits were affected, could be receiving much larger sums.
Really, like how much?
Potentially, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases.
Wow.
Conversely, others might get a few thousand. That average just highlights the broad, significant impact across the group.
Okay, that makes sense. And the timeline. When did this start and when does it wrap up?
So the timeline is also pretty critical here. These payments actually started rolling out with impressive speed back in late February.
Okay, so they've been going out for a few months.
Yes. And the great news is that June, this month, is slated to be the final major month for these distributions.
The final push.
Exactly. So by the end of this month, the vast majority, millions of beneficiaries, will finally have these thousands of dollars in their possession. It brings closure, hopefully, to a long wait for some.
That's fantastic news.
And this isn't some small niche program. It's impacting literally millions of lives. It's providing a direct, substantial financial injection into households that really need it.
It sounds like a huge effort by Social Security.
It's a concerted, agency-wide effort. They're working to get these crucial funds where they belong as quickly as humanly possible. It really signals a profound commitment to beneficiaries, I think.
It absolutely speaks to their capability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When they're directed to act.
It really does. Operational efficiency, dedication, especially when empowered by legislation like this. And yeah, it's a large-scale operation touching a significant chunk of the beneficiary population who were hit by those specific old provisions.
Right. WEP and GPO, we'll get into those.
Yes. It's a huge logistical undertaking, and honestly, successfully delivering these benefits to so many people in a relatively short time frame is quite impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we've seen so many questions coming in about this. People asking, how do I get one? Where do I sign up? Is everyone getting this?
Very common questions, understandably.
And they're excellent questions. It's really important we provide some clarity here. This isn't a universal payment, right? Not for all Social Security beneficiaries.
No, absolutely not. It's specifically targeted. It's for a particular group who were previously affected by those two provisions we mentioned.
Okay, so we need to dive deep into who exactly is eligible.
Yes.
Why these payments are being pushed out with such urgency now, and what that says about the system overall. But the bottom line is, if you are in that affected group,
then this money is either already there or it's definitely on its way very soon.
Okay, good. So if you're asking those questions, you're obviously tuned into the financial side of things. And yeah, we're here to provide that clarity. The what, the who, and the how.
Precisely.
All right, so here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Looking at the why behind all this. The legislative foundation.
The root cause.
Yeah. The reason for these significant payments is the Social Security Fairness Act. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes, a crucial piece of legislation.
It was passed successfully by lawmakers, House and Senate, late last year, and then signed into law by the president on January 5th of this year.
Correct. A relatively recent development in terms of enactment.
So this isn't some minor administrative tweak, is it? Or just a temporary policy change?
No. This is a foundational shift. It's rooted in a different view, a fairer view, of how earned benefits should be calculated for certain people. And it translates directly into more money for those affected.
Okay. And connecting this to the history, you mentioned two specific provisions it repealed.
Yes, exactly. If we look at the bigger picture, the historical context, this act specifically targeted two provisions. They had been on the books for decades, and they significantly reduced Social Security benefits for certain groups.
What were they called again?
The Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP for short.
WEP.
And the Government Pension Offset, or GPO.
GPO, got it. WEP and GPO.
The repeal of those two provisions is the direct and sole cause of these new increased benefits people are seeing. It's a legislative reversal that, frankly, beneficiaries and advocacy groups had been fighting for a very, very long time.
Okay, let's break down WEP first.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like it affected a lot of public servants.
It did, a substantial number, particularly people in public service roles. So previously, the Windfall Elimination Provision, WEP, it affected how your Social Security benefits were calculated if you also received a pension from a job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes.
Like what kind of jobs?
Think about dedicated public servants like K-12 teachers in many states. Police officers, firefighters in certain states, California, Massachusetts, Ohio, are common examples.
Okay.
Or even some federal employees under the older system who didn't contribute to Social Security through that specific government job. But importantly, they might have paid into Social Security through another job, maybe a part-time job, summer work, or earlier in their career, or through self-employment.
Right, so they did contribute to Social Security at some point, just not through that main government pension job.
Exactly. Now, the original argument for WEP way back in 1983 when it was introduced was trying to prevent what they saw as double dipping or a windfall.
A windfall. How so?
Well, the Social Security benefit formula is weighted. It's designed to give a higher percentage of pre-retirement earnings back to lower-income workers.
Okay.
The concern was that someone who worked, say, only 10 or 15 years in a job paying Social Security taxes, but then had a full career and got a pension from a non-covered job might look like a low-wage worker to the Social Security formula.
Ah, because their Social Security earnings record looked low, even though they had another pension.
Precisely. So the worry was they'd unfairly benefit from that weighting, getting a higher replacement rate from Social Security than maybe they should have, given their total retirement income.
I see the logic, even if it caused problems.
Right. So under WEP, the calculation of your Social Security benefit was changed. They used a modified formula, which almost always resulted in a lower primary insurance amount. That's your basic Social Security benefit amount.
Lower than someone else with the exact same Social Security earnings history, but who didn't have that non-covered pension.
Exactly. The repeal of WEP means those individuals, the teachers, the police officers, the firefighters, they now see their Social Security benefits calculated more favorably without that modified formula.
So it leads directly to higher payments.
Significantly higher payments than they would have gotten under the old WEP rules. It's really about restoring the full value of the benefits they earned through the work where they did pay Social Security taxes, recognizing those contributions without that penalty.
That makes sense. It rectifies that imbalance for a really deserving group, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, ensuring their contributions are fully recognized and rewarded. And then there's GPO, the government pension offset. That one's equally significant, especially for families.
Okay, GPO. What did that do?
Similarly, GPO impacted how spousal or survivor Social Security benefits were calculated, specifically if the person eligible for the spousal or survivor benefit also received their own government pension from non-covered work.
Ah, so this is about benefits based on a spouse's record.
Correct. So let's say your spouse worked and paid into Social Security their whole career. You might be eligible for a spousal benefit while they're alive, or a survivor benefit if they pass away.
Right.
But if you yourself worked, say, as a state employee or teacher in a non-covered job and earned your own government pension from that job,
Then GPO kick in.
yes. Under GPO, your Social Security spousal or survivor benefit would be reduced, usually by 2/3 of the amount of your own non-covered government pension.
2/3. That's a huge reduction.
It often was. In many, many cases, this reduction could wipe out the entire Social Security spousal or survivor benefit, reduce it right down to zero.
Wow. So families were left without a safety net they thought they had.
Exactly. It was incredibly frustrating and often financially devastating for families who were counting on those benefits, especially for a surviving spouse after their partner passed away. It really undermined the whole purpose of survivor benefits for those affected.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly unfair.
It felt that way to many. So the repeal of GPO means that those eligible spouses or survivors can now receive the full Social Security benefits they're entitled to based on their spouse's record, without that reduction due to their own government pension.
That must unlock significant additional income for many.
It really does. For surviving spouses especially, this can be a profound boost to their financial safety net. It provides critical support that was previously denied, allowing them to manage expenses, cover medical costs, or just maintain a decent standard of living without that hardship.
So, wrapping up this part, what does it all mean for the everyday person affected?
Well, in essence, the Social Security Fairness Act removes these old, you could say, punitive barriers that significantly cut benefits for specific groups.
Right.
And it directly translates into more money for those people. It's about ensuring a fair calculation of the benefits they actually earn through Social Security contributions or that they're eligible for through their spouse.
It's providing the full financial support they deserve based on their work and family circumstances.
Exactly. This isn't just, bureaucratic shuffling. It's a law that puts real, tangible, additional dollars into the hands of millions of people.
And it's a clear signal, too, right, that lawmakers are listening to these concerns and actually acting to improve things for people who felt penalized.
Absolutely. The net positive is undeniable. This act doesn't just stop future reductions, it actively restores benefits that were reduced in the past. And as we've been saying, it delivers them as this significant lump sum payment covering those past periods.
Yeah.
It truly empowers these beneficiaries with greater financial stability and hopefully a renewed sense of security. It's a validation for their years of service and contributions.
Okay, so let's pivot to who is actually getting these payments. Because you said it's not everyone.
Right. Crucial point. It's important to understand this isn't a universal payment. Not every Social Security beneficiary will see this specific lump sum.
It's targeted.
Highly targeted.
Yeah.
Specifically for the 3.2 million people identified as being impacted by the repeal of those two provisions, WEP and GPO.
3.2 million people. Okay.
So if you, or maybe someone you know, falls into this category, perhaps you have that pension from a government job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, or you're a spouse or survivor in that GPO situation, then this is very significant news for you.
It's not like a broad stimulus check then. It's a specific legislative correction.
Precisely. It benefits a specific demographic that was previously disadvantaged by those old rules.
And do we know how the rollout is going? You mentioned 3.2 million total. Where are things at?
Yes, we have a pretty comprehensive update on the distribution process. So of that total, 3.2 million beneficiaries identified as eligible.
Yeah.
Approximately 2.3 million payments have already been meticulously processed and sent out since late February.
2.3 million out of 3.2 million. That's a huge number already done.
It really is. It's a massive undertaking that has already brought substantial, immediate financial relief to a vast number of people across the country. It demonstrates, again, an impressive logistical feat by the agency.
That's an astonishing amount of money out the door efficiently in just a few months. But you mentioned earlier there are still some people waiting. About 1 million left.
Yes, that's correct. While the majority, the 2.3 million, have received their funds, there's still about 1 million people whose situations are, well, a bit more complicated.
Complicated how?
These cases just require a little more time, maybe more intensive review to process accurately. These are the unique cases that Social Security had indicated from the start would take a bit longer to sort out.
Can you give examples like what makes a case complicated?
Sure. It could be things like beneficiaries with incomplete or conflicting earnings records, maybe spanning multiple employers or different states over many years.
Okay.
Or individuals with complex family structures that impact how survivor benefits are calculated. Cases involving beneficiaries who live overseas distributing payments internationally requires extra steps and verification. Or maybe just very specific, nuanced details about their non-covered pensions that require manual review and reconciliation against Social Security records. The agency is actively, systematically working through each of these intricate cases. They're really trying to leave no stone unturned to get it right.
Okay, that makes sense. But it raises a question. Why the delay for some, and why the big push, the urgency now from Social Security to get these remaining payments out, especially if they're complex?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating part of this story. What's happening is Social Security is actively reallocating its resources internally.
How so?
They are literally pulling specialized staff away from other duties, other routine tasks within the agency, specifically to prioritize the processing, distribution, and delivery of these payments for that remaining group of about 1 million people.
So they're moving people around to focus on this?
Yes. They're not just letting them process through the normal queues. They're creating special task forces. They might be cross-training personnel, dedicating extraordinary effort to this specific initiative. And the new acting commissioner, Frank Basignano, remember, he was just confirmed by the Senate in early May. He has made it abundantly clear.
What did he say?
He has stated publicly that these payments will be fully processed and deposited for all eligible beneficiaries by the end of June, no later than July 1st.
The firm deadline.
End of June. A very firm, publicly stated deadline. And the agency is dedicating significant effort making these internal operational adjustments specifically to meet that target. It demonstrates a really unparalleled level of commitment, I'd say.
That level of prioritization, actively redirecting staff and resources, That sends a pretty clear message, doesn't it?
It's a crystal clear indicator of Social Security's profound dedication to its beneficiaries. It signals a strong, actionable commitment to getting these crucial funds into the hands of the people who are entitled to them.
Even if it means shuffling things around internally.
Exactly. Even if it means adjusting operations and maybe resequencing other administrative work temporarily, they're literally shifting personnel to accelerate these payments. It showcases a willingness to adapt and innovate to fulfill their core mission.
It's a powerful statement about the agency's focus on protecting and delivering those earned benefits. It shows they're responsive to the new law.
Absolutely. Responsive to legislative mandates and focused on the financial well-being of their constituents.
It really is impressive. It's not just talk. It's a tangible reallocation of people and resources. It shows a proactive stance to make sure these benefits get out quickly and completely. This action really reinforces the idea that when new laws are passed to increase benefits, Social Security is genuinely committed to implementing them efficiently, with dedication and a sense of urgency.
It definitely instills a greater sense of confidence in the system's ability to adapt and deliver for its users. It pushes back against any perception of, slow-moving bureaucracy.
Yeah, it shows a system that, despite its huge size and complexity, can demonstrate impressive agility and responsiveness when changes directly benefit people.
That kind of commitment to delivering on its promise is absolutely vital. Vital for maintaining and building public trust, especially when we're talking about something as fundamental as financial security and retirement, or after losing a spouse.
Okay, let's talk about the impact beyond just the WEP and GPO specifics. These payments, they represent a very real, very tangible financial boost for the people getting them, right? It could change their daily lives.
Absolutely. Transformative for many. Imagine, again, getting that extra $6,710 or potentially much more landing in your bank account right now.
Yeah.
For individuals on fixed incomes where maybe every single dollar is already budgeted out, this is far more than just a little bonus. It can be profoundly life-changing.
How so? Can you give some examples?
Well, it offers a new level of financial freedom or security that simply wasn't there before. Think about it. For a single retiree, that amount could easily be the difference between struggling to pay for an unexpected major car repair.
Right, something that could really derail their budget.
Exactly. Or a crucial medical...
Okay, let's dive in. Just imagine for a second, you check your bank account, and boom, there's this unexpected, pretty significant chunk of money sitting there.
Yeah, not just pocket change. We're talking potentially thousands.
Exactly. And you might have heard some chatter about this lately, maybe whispers about Social Security sending out, I don't know, like double payments, or people getting their money early.
Or just this general buzz that right now some people are actually getting more money from Social Security than they usually do. More benefit, really.
Right. And for a certain group of Social Security beneficiaries, that's not just talking. It's exactly what's been happening. And it's still happening.
It is. We are literally in the middle of a huge distribution, a major wave of Social Security back payments. It's affecting millions, and it involves, well, billions of dollars.
And that's what we're digging into today. This is our deep dive. We've gathered basically a stack of the latest reports right out of Social Security.
And including stuff confirmed directly by the acting commissioner, Frank Bizzigano.
So our mission here is pretty clear. Cut through any potential confusion and just unpack what is really going on with these payments. We're sticking only to what our sources tell us.
Right. Who's getting this money? How much are we talking about per person? And, the total amount.
And the big one, why? Why now? What are the actual details behind this? What's the story from the source material that explains this, frankly, massive financial event?
We're just going to lay out what the reports and statements say, the mechanics, the numbers, the reasons given. No speculation beyond that.
Exactly. Let's start with just the scale. Because the numbers involved here, they're pretty mind-blowing. This isn't some tiny tweak.
Oh, definitely not. It's, like you said, a financial wave. The core fact, confirmed straight from these recent reports, is that Social Security is absolutely sending out these big back payments.
But it's the sheer volume of money that really jumps out.
It really does. I mean, we're not even starting in the millions territory here. We are firmly talking billions.
Billions with a B.
Yeah. The sources are very clear. Well over $15 billion has already been distributed, already gone out the door as part of this specific effort.
$15 billion already sent. And the latest reports get even more precise.
They do. They peg it at $15.3 billion. That's the amount already distributed to millions of beneficiaries as of the latest updates.
Wow, $15.3 billion. Just, pause and think about that. That's a huge amount of money already flowing because of these back payments.
And incredibly, they're not done yet. That's what's really striking in the reports. There's still a significant amount specifically targeted for distribution this month. Right now, in June.
Okay, so more is coming out as we speak.
That's the plan. The sources indicate it's about another $6 billion, give or take a little bit. You know how these estimates go. But around $6 billion more dollars scheduled to be sent out just this month.
Okay, wait. So let's add that up. We have the $15.3 billion that millions have already received. And then you add this approximately $6 billion just heading out the door over the next, few weeks to hundreds of thousands more people.
That pushes the total, the grand total for this specific back payment distribution to well over $21 billion.
$21 billion.
Think about that. Just let that number sink in. Over $21 billion being distributed through this single initiative of back payments.
Yeah.
It just hammers home the sheer magnitude of what's happening here. It's an incredible sum, really, all aimed at correcting past payments.
It really is staggering. And, while that 21 billion figure is enormous, maybe the part that hits home even more is the impact on the individuals receiving it.
Right, because sometimes you hear these huge numbers, billions, and you think, okay, it's spread so thin, maybe it's not a huge deal for each person.
But the sources tell a very different story here.
Oh, absolutely. That's not the case at all. The reports give us a really clear, specific number for the average payment, the average amount people are getting in these back payments.
And that average amount, according to the latest figures we have, is, drumroll, $6,710.
Yeah. $6,710. That's the average. As a single lump sum retroactive back payment for the folks affected by this specific change.
And that word average is key, right?
Crucial. Absolutely crucial. That $6,710 figure, it's an average. So yes, many people are getting something around that amount, but some are definitely getting more than that, potentially significantly more.
And some less, naturally. It depends on their individual situation, how long they were affected by the old rules.
Exactly. But that average $6,710, it gives you a really strong sense of the financial weight here. It's not trivial.
No kidding. $6,710 just landing in your account. One payment. Retroactive. The source material is pretty direct about, it calls it a big old lump sum retroactive back pay payment.
Yeah, big old lump sum, pretty descriptive.
And one source even adds, a bit of color, saying it's the kind of money that, quote, any of us would be super happy with if it just showed up unexpectedly.
Can't argue with that.
It really underscores that more money angle for the people getting it. This isn't some tiny cost of living adjustment or a small bonus. For a lot of individuals, this is a really substantial financial benefit, a big boost all at once.
It absolutely is. A significant positive financial shot in the arm for those receiving it. And the sources also help paint a picture of who these recipients are.
Right. We know it's not everyone on Social Security.
No, it's a specific group. The reports mention that millions of people have already gotten these payments. They've already benefited from these average lump sums of over $6,700.
Millions already paid.
Yeah.
But there's still that group waiting, the ones the remaining $6 billion is intended for.
Yes. That group, the ones still in the queue, so to speak, is estimated to be roughly 900,000 people.
900,000. Almost 1 million people still waiting for this specific payment.
Right. Or, as one source phrased it, just shy of 1 million people. They're the focus now, the ones whose payments need to be processed and sent out, ideally this month.
And just to put that 900,000 number in perspective,
yeah, it's important context. While 900,000 is obviously a lot of people, the sources do point out that this group represents a very small percentage of total beneficiaries across the entire Social Security system.
So, okay, the total money is huge, over $21 billion. The individual payments are substantial, averaging $6,710. Millions have already received theirs. And this final group of around 900,000, a smaller slice of the overall beneficiary pie, is next in line.
Exactly. Which brings us naturally to the core question, why? Why is this happening now? This isn't just a regular monthly payment schedule thing, is it?
No, definitely not routine. And this is where it gets really interesting because the answer points directly to action taken by lawmakers. This whole thing stems from a specific piece of legislation.
That's the key. It's not just some administrative decision to send out money. It's rooted in a specific law passed relatively recently.
And that law is called
The Social Security Fairness Act. That's the foundation for this entire initiative.
the Social Security Fairness Act.
Okay.
And the sources trace its path into law.
They do. They give us the timeline. According to the reports we looked at, it passed through the House of Representatives fairly late last year, specifically in November 2023.
Okay, passed the House in November, then.
Then it moved over to the Senate, and it passed there in December 2023.
So House in November, Senate in December.
Yep.
Pretty quick turnaround at the end of the year. And then it needed the president's signature.
Correct. And that happened on January 5th of this year, 2024. The sources highlight that date, January 5th. They even mention there was a signing ceremony that day.
A ceremony. Anything exciting happened?
Apparently not. One source rather dryly called it pretty boring, but boring or not, the crucial point is the date it became official law, January 5th, 2024.
Got it. January 5th this year, the Social Security Fairness Act becomes law. And what did this act actually do that triggered billions in back payments?
This is the core of it. The fundamental action of the Social Security Fairness Act was that it repealed two provisions, two very long-standing, very significant provisions within Social Security law.
Repealed them, meaning got rid of them entirely.
Exactly. Wipe them off the books.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What were these two provisions? What did they do for all the years they were active?
The two provisions repealed by the Act are the Windfall Elimination Provision. Most people know it as WEP, W-E-P.
WP. Heard of that one?
And the second one is the Government Pension Offset, or GPO.
WEP and GPO.
Okay.
Those sound familiar, like they've been around the block a few times in Social Security discussions.
Oh, absolutely. They are not new arrivals. The sources really underscore how long these rules were in place, which highlights why repealing them is such a big deal. The GPO, the Government Pension Offset, that one's been in effect since 1977.
1977, wow. That's a long time.
It is. And WEP, the Windfall Elimination Provision, that came along shortly after in the early 1980s.
So we're talking, what, the sources give a time frame.
Yeah, they calculate it out. They say these provisions have been embedded in the system for 40-some-odd years. And for GPO specifically, it's almost 50 years.
40 to 50 years these rules have been operating. They weren't just minor footnotes. They were integral parts of how benefits were calculated for certain people for nearly half a century.
Deeply ingrained components, absolutely.
So for those 4 or 5 decades, what was the actual practical impact of WEP and GPO on the people they applied to?
Well, according to the source material, their main job, their function was offsetting benefit checks.
Offsetting, meaning reducing.
Essentially, yes. In practice, it meant that for the beneficiaries who fell under these WEP and GPO rules, their Social Security benefit checks were lower than they would have been otherwise, lower than someone in a similar earning situation who wasn't subject to WEP or GPO.
Okay. And did this affect a lot of people?
The sources estimate it impacted a pretty substantial number, around 3.2 million-ish people, give or take. Their benefit checks were being reduced by these provisions.
3.2 million people having their Social Security checks reduced for decades because of WP and GPO. And who were these people typically? The sources give any context?
Generally, yes. Based on the sources and just general knowledge of WPGPO, they typically affected people who worked jobs where they didn't pay into Social Security. Think certain state or local government jobs, maybe some teachers, federal workers under the older system.
Right. People who earned a pension from that non-covered work.
Exactly. They had a pension from that job, but maybe they also worked other jobs where they did pay into Social Security and earned a benefit that way too. WEP and GPO were meant to sort of adjust the Social Security benefit based on that non-covered pension.
Adjust, meaning reduce.
For the affected individual, yeah, the end result was a smaller Social Security check than they might have otherwise expected based purely on their Social Security earnings record. It was an offset.
Okay, so for almost 50 years, WEP and GPO reduced Social Security payments for about 3.2 million people, mostly those with pensions from non-covered government work.
That's the picture the sources paint. An offsetting effect, a reduction for decades.
And then the Social Security Fairness Act comes along, signed January 5th this year.
And it explicitly repeals WEP and GPO, gets rid of them.
And that's the connection. That's why the money is flowing.
Precisely, that's the catalyst. Because those rules causing the reduction are now gone, thanks to the new law, the beneficiaries who were affected are now legally entitled to the full Social Security benefit amount they would have received without WEP and GPO kicking in.
They get the amount calculated as if WEP and GPO never existed for them going forward.
Right. And crucially, this is why they're getting these huge back payments, these retroactive payments. It's all the money they should have been getting but wasn't paid out because the old rules were still being applied until the repeal took effect. It's delivering that more benefit we talked about earlier, correcting for the past reductions.
Okay, that makes the link clear between the repeal and the money. But you keep saying retroactive. Let's really zero in on that word, because that seems absolutely critical to understanding why these are lump sum payments, not just slightly higher monthly checks going forward. Why are they going back in time?
This is a really vital detail the source material emphasizes. It's the foundation of the whole back payment operation. So remember, the Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law January 5th, 2024.
Right. Which, as we're talking now in early June, was what, about 5-6 months ago?
Correct. But here's the kicker. The law itself, the act that repealed WEP and GPO, it includes a specific clause about its effective date, when its provisions actually take legal effect.
And that effective date wasn't January 5th, 2024.
No. The law explicitly states its effect goes all the way back to January of last year, meaning January 2023.
Whoa, okay, hold on. A law signed in January 2024 legally changed the rules for calculating Social Security payments starting way back in January 2023.
Exactly. That's the power of retroactive legislation. The legal impact of getting rid of WEP and GPO was applied as if those rules hadn't been in effect for anyone starting from January 1st, 2023.
Okay, so that created an instant situation where, for every single month from January 2023 onwards, all those 3.2 million people affected by WEP and GPO should have been getting a higher Social Security payment because the rules reducing their checks were, legally speaking, gone retroactively.
Got it. That's exactly the scenario it created.
But obviously, Social Security couldn't just flip a switch on January 1st, 2023. They were still operating under the old rules, calculating and sending checks with the WEP GPO reductions applied.
All through 2023 and likely into the early part of 2024 until the new law was signed and they could actually implement the change in their systems.
Right. So all that time, from Jan 23 until they adjusted the payments this year, people were getting less than what the new retroactive law said they were entitled to.
Precisely. And that is why the sources describe these payments as literally just catching people up. They're paying out the difference. The difference between what was actually paid each month since January 2023 under the old rules and what should have been paid each month according to the new law without the WEP and GPO offsets. It's a straightforward correction of all those past underpayments.
Catching them up on all that more money they legally should have received month after month after month.
Wow.
The sources even give an example of what that monthly difference looked like on average.
They do. They provide an average figure. They state that, on average, the beneficiaries who were hit by WEP and GPO were supposed to be getting about $360 a month more than they actually received while those old provisions were still being applied.
$360. That was the average amount per month that wasn't being paid out due to WEP and GPO from January of last year onwards.
That's the average monthly shortfall, yes.
Okay. And so the big lump sum payment is just adding up all those $360 differences.
Essentially, yes. It's calculated pretty simply. You take that average monthly difference of $360 or, whatever the specific monthly difference was for that individual based on their own benefit calculation.
Right. It vary person to person.
Of course. But you take that monthly amount they were shorted and you multiply it by every single month that they should have gotten that extra money but didn't. So you count the months from January 2023 right up until their retroactive payment is finally calculated and sent out this year.
Okay. Now the math really clicks. Let's do a quick estimate. If the average difference was $360 a month, and let's say someone gets their payment now in June 2024, that's roughly, 18 months since January 2023?
About that, yeah. January 23 to June 24 is 18 months.
So $360 times 18 months, that comes out to $6,480.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that's remarkably close to the $6,710 average lump sum payment figure we were talking about earlier. It perfectly illustrates how accumulating those $360 monthly differences over a year and a half results in a very substantial single payment.
Exactly. The sources are clear. The big, huge retroactive back payments are simply the sum total of all those monthly shortfalls. All the differences between what was paid and what should have been paid without WEP and GPO added up over all the months the law was retroactively effective, but the payments hadn't caught up yet. It is purely about getting people the full amount of more money they are now owed, correcting that past reduction period.
That explanation of the retroactivity makes the size of these payments completely understandable. Okay, so millions have been paid this correction. Where are things right now with getting the payments out to that remaining group, or roughly 900,000 people?
We actually have pretty fresh updates on that, clarity on the current processing status. And this comes straight from the top, from the current Acting Commissioner of Social Security, Frank Bisigato.
Okay, the acting chief provided an update.
Yeah, the sources mentioned he was out recently discussing the progress on this distribution. It's interesting, too, because there was a previous update maybe about a month before that from the former Acting Commissioner, Leland Dudek.
Oh, right. Things change quickly sometimes. What did the previous update say?
Back then, maybe a month or so ago, Dudek had stated that around $14.8 billion had been sent out.
$14.8 billion.
Right. And now the latest info from Acting Commissioner Bisigato confirms they've pushed past that. The number is now up to $15.3 billion distributed.
Okay, so that shows definite progress. They sent out another, what, $500 million in the last month or so? They're actively working through these cases.
Clearly, money is still moving out the door.
So what's the specific situation for those final 900,000 or so people who are still waiting? Why haven't they been paid yet if millions have?
Well, according to the sources, the key detail here is that these remaining payments need to be manually processed.
Manually processed. Okay. That sounds time-consuming. In this day and age, what does manual processing involve for almost 1 million people's payments?
It sounds like quite an effort. The sources give some clues. They indicate that Social Security staff are apparently being pulled from other sectors within the agency.
Pulled from their regular jobs.
Seems like it. Pulled over specifically to prioritize the distribution and the delivery of these payments.
So it's an all-hands-on-deck situation for this final group.
It suggests that, yeah, it implies that maybe these remaining cases are more complex, or maybe they have unique circumstances that don't fit neatly into an automated calculation. Someone, likely a trained claims specialist, has to physically look at the case.
Review the earnings record, the pension info.
Right. They have to manually figure out how much they're going to get based on the repealed WEP GPO and the retroactive period, and then manually process this to get the payment issued.
Okay. That definitely explains why this last batch might be taking longer than the first millions who maybe had simpler calculations that could be automated. It sounds like they're tackling the trickier ones now.
That seems like a reasonable interpretation, yeah. It's a dedicated push to get through these perhaps more complex cases.
But is there an end in sight? Did the acting commissioner give a timeline for finishing this manual processing?
Yes, thankfully. The sources provide a pretty clear projected timeline coming straight from Social Security officials. According to them, their target, their goal, is that by the end of this month, meaning the end of June 2024.
End of June. So very soon.
Very soon. By the end of June, they will have all of these payments completely distributed to the remaining 900,000 people.
All of them. That's ambitious, but good news for those waiting. So, based on when these reports came out, that meant the final payment should be going out within the next 3 weeks or so.
That was the stated timeline, yes. The clear objective is to basically wrap up this entire specific distribution related to the WEP and GPO repeal by the time June closes out. Put a bow on it.
Okay, so the finish line really seems to be in view for this massive wave of corrective back payments. Now, you mentioned something earlier that really piqued my interest. Something about the average payment amount. You said the sources suggest it might actually increase.
Yes, that was another really interesting point raised in the material. It gives some insight into how the timing of all this processing might affect the final numbers. They suggest that the average benefit lump sum, that $6,710 figure we keep mentioning, are probably going to increase as these final payments go out.
Increase. How does that work? Usually when you process the last bit of something, it doesn't change the average much or might even bring it down if there's smaller cases. Why would the average go up?
The logic provided in the source ties directly back to that retroactivity we discussed and the fact that processing is taking time. Remember, the effective date is January 2023.
Right.
So every single month that goes by before someone gets their retroactive payment adds another month's worth of that underpayment difference onto their total lump sum.
Oh.
The source explains it clearly. Because sending these final payments out is just taking longer, then By default, the number of months that they're being delayed is more for the people getting paid later compared to those paid earlier.
Okay, I think I get it. So if someone got their back payment process back in, say, March of this year, their lump sum covered the months from January 2023 through March 2024, maybe 15 months worth of the difference.
Right, something like that.
But someone who is only getting their payment process now, in June 2024, their lump sum has to cover January 2023 all the way through June 2024. That's like 18 months.
Exactly. 3 more months of that $360 average difference, or whatever their specific difference is.
Which adds over $1,000 more just from those extra 3 months.
Precisely. So the source concludes the average check is probably going to rise because of that. The folks who are waiting longer while their cases are manually processed are essentially tacking 3 more months onto that calculation compared to the people paid out earlier this year.
So the longer wait actually results in a larger individual payment for those still waiting, because the retroactive period keeps extending, and those larger payments will pull the overall average for the whole group upwards.
That's the mechanism described. It means that for these final 900,000 people, their payments might, on average, be noticeably larger than the $6,710 average we saw from the earlier recipients.
Which is actually good news for those who've had to wait patiently.
From a purely financial perspective for them, yes. The delay means a bigger check when it finally arrives, and the sources even took a guess at where that average might land.
They speculated on a new number.
They did. They said something like, they wouldn't be shocked at all if we see some kind of memo or some kind of press release coming out from Social Security down the line.
Once all the payments are done.
Right. Saying something like, wow, the average lump sums for this whole PGPO repeal distribution actually ended up being in the amount of $7,800 or something like that.
$7,800. As the average. That's a jump of over $1,000 from the current $6,710 average. That would be really significant.
It would be. And the source explicitly mentioned they kind of anticipate it happening precisely because of this longer processing time for the final group tacking on more retroactive months.
So again, this reinforces that positive financial benefit angle. Even the delay, in a way, potentially leads to more money for the average recipient in this group because the correction covers a longer time span. The focus is purely on that positive outcome in the source material, a potentially rising average payment.
Correct. The narrative presented is that the average amount is likely increasing, meaning, on balance, more money per person due to the extended retroactive period being covered.
Okay, so it really feels like this specific major chapter, this correction based on repealing WEP and GPO, is genuinely winding down.
That's absolutely the picture painted by the timeline in the sources. According to the official projections, once we roll over to July, which, based on the report timing, is just a few weeks away, these specific payments should, fingers crossed, be completely done, finished.
And the sources mentioned a feeling about this conclusion, right? Both from the agency and the people waiting.
Yeah, there's a sense of wanting closure. Understandably, the beneficiaries who are still waiting, they want their money. And they probably want to be done with this too, Just get it settled.
Can't blame them.
Not at all. And from Social Security's side, wrapping up this huge manual distribution effort means they can finally put that cute little bow on it, as one source put it, complete this major task, and maybe redirect those resources and focus back to other pressing matters.
And for the recipients, it means finally getting that corrected, larger benefit amount they've been entitled to since January of last year, all delivered in that one significant lump sum.
The end of this particular waiting game for them.
It definitely sounds like this specific topic, these particular back payments from this specific law change, is about to shift from being a current event to being a completed action.
That's the clear expectation based on the official information. The money's flowing, the process for the last group is scheduled to end very soon, and that financial correction is being delivered.
Okay, fantastic. So let's just quickly pull together the main threads, the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Okay. We've seen a really massive distribution of Social Security back payments totaling well over $21 billion when you add the $15.3 billion already sent to the roughly $6 billion plan for this month.
And this is all driven by a specific law, the Social Security Fairness Act.
Correct. Signed January 5th this year. But crucially, it repealed 2 very old rules, WEP and GPO, that had been reducing benefits for about 3.2 million people for decades.
And the repeal was made retroactive, all the way back to January 2023.
Which is why people are getting these large lump sum back payments. They're catching people up on the difference, the more money they should have received each month since Jan 23. That difference averaged about $360 a month.
Adding up to an average lump sum payment of $6,710 so far, a really significant amount for individuals. And we learned that average might even climb higher, maybe towards $7,800, as the final payments go out to the last 900,000 people this month because their retroactive period's longer.
It's a powerful, very direct example of how a change in legislation, even undoing rules that were nearly 50 years old, can trigger immediate, substantial, and retroactive financial benefits for millions, correcting past payments. The sources consistently frame this as a positive financial outcome for those affected.
What really strikes me is just the scale of that correction. Undoing those old rules unlocked billions, putting thousands into people's pockets to fix what the new law viewed as an unfair reduction.
It does make you think, doesn't it? And perhaps here's a thought to leave you with as we wrap up. What are the wider ripples, both good and maybe complicated, when systems make these kinds of large-scale, retroactive corrections based on changes to long-standing rules? How does correcting past financial calculations like this affect people's trust and sense of fairness within these big systems?
That's a great question. Pondering how a specific tweak in policy repealing WEEP and GPO translates directly into $21 billion plus flowing out, with average checks around $7,000 correcting payments from the last year and a half, it's a potent reminder of how much these legislative details matter in people's real lives.
It really underscores how dynamic these systems can be and the potential for significant positive change when policies are reevaluated, especially when those changes reach back in time to correct things.
Absolutely. And that's really the value, I think, of doing this kind of deep dive. We cut through the noise, find these sometimes surprising facts, understand the how and why behind huge events like this $21 billion distribution, and see the direct line from lawmaking to people's bank accounts.
There's always more beneath the surface, always important details in how these complex systems function day to day. And keeping track of official updates like those from the acting commissioner is key to understanding these specific impactful events as they happen.
For sure. So while this particular WPGPO payment wave is ending soon, the bigger story of how laws impact benefits, how systems adjust, and how corrections happen, that definitely continues. Okay, let's unpack this. There's definitely a significant amount of money flowing through the Social Security system right now, and it's creating a lot of buzz. We're not just talking about the regular monthly benefits people expect. We're talking about billions, literally billions, being paid out in these lump sums.
Yeah.
And for some people, this means getting money they were actually owed from, well, over a year ago. It's a pretty substantial financial event for millions.
That's absolutely right. These payments are definitely real. They are confirmed, and they represent, a considerable sum for the individuals getting them. It's a major correction, really, that's been awaited by many for a long time.
And that brings us straight into our deep dive today. We are going to really explore these recent Social Security back payments in detail.
Right.
We're not relying on guesswork or, rumors. Our insights are drawn directly from official reports, statements, including confirmation from the Social Security Acting Commissioner himself, Frank Bisignano, and also past governmental declarations.
Exactly. And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to give you a crystal clear understanding. We'll break down exactly what these payments are, pinpoint who's receiving them, explain the legislative reasons why they're happening now.
The why is key.
And quantify the immense scale of the money involved. The goal is to provide you with all the essential details without, drowning you in jargon, so you walk away truly informed.
Okay, let's get started then. So, first things first, let's just confirm the reality here. This isn't just something someone might have heard through the grapevine, right? These are factual, ongoing Social Security back payments.
They absolutely are, and the confirmation, like you said, comes from the very top within the agency. The current Social Security Acting Commissioner, Frank Bisignano, he's explicitly discussed these payments in recent public statements and interviews.
Right.
And his confirmation is really vital because it validates the scale and the legitimacy of what's happening.
And the sources we're looking at, they point out that Commissioner Bisignano's discussions about these payments, they're happening during a time of pretty significant change within the Social Security Administration itself. We're seeing these administrative shifts, trying to improve efficiency, service delivery,
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
The sources even briefly noted the exploration of like AI for certain functions, maybe handling phone calls, and okay, that's not the focus of this deep dive.
Right, different topic.
But it kind of underscores that the agency is actively working on modernizing its operations, even while they're handling massive undertakings like these back payments.
And what really stands out when you look at the official numbers is just the sheer volume of money that has already been put into the hands of beneficiaries. I mean, this isn't some small, limited program.
No.
It's a massive payout impacting millions.
Massive is probably an understatement, honestly. The figures cited in the sources show that well over $15 billion has already been distributed.
Yeah, and to be a bit more precise, the official figure reported is about $15.3 billion that has gone out the door so far.
$15.3 billion.
Wow. And like you said, this isn't going to just a select few people. It's been distributed to millions of individuals who were previously getting those reduced benefits.
So $15.3 billion already out, distributed to millions. That's it's a staggering amount. And this is where it gets maybe more relevant for a lot of listeners right now.
Right.
The process isn't actually complete yet.
Yeah.
The sources confirm there is still a substantial amount of money left to be sent out.
Yes, exactly. There is still approximately another $6 billion that is scheduled to be sent out.
$6 billion more.
And importantly, this remaining amount, it's targeted to go out this month, June.
Okay, so billions already out and billions more coming very, very soon, specifically this month. If you add that up, that brings the total projected payout to, what, over $21 billion?
Yeah.
Based on the $15.3 billion sent in the $6 billion remaining.
That's the math. Yeah. Over $21 billion total.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the individual impact. Because when people hear billions, they immediately think, okay, what does that mean for me or for someone I know? How much are individuals actually receiving in these lump sums?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And the official data gives us a pretty clear picture here. According to a Social Security press release, which the sources cited, the average retroactive payment amount is $6,710.
Oh, $6,710 on average. That is a truly significant lump sum for any individual.
It absolutely is. And, it's really vital to remember that this is an average figure.
Right. Averages can hide a lot.
Exactly. So what that means in practice is, well, while some people might receive less than that amount, many, many people are receiving substantially more.
Right.
Some could be getting checks for, $10,000, $20,000, maybe even more, depending on their specific situation and how long their previous benefits were being reduced. This isn't pocket change we're talking about. It's a really substantial financial correction for the individuals receiving it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Receiving a lump sum of nearly $7,000 on average, or potentially much more, that would be genuinely transformative financially for millions of households. It's money they were owed, right? And its arrival now must provide a significant boost.
It really underscores the real-world impact of this action. It's putting substantial funds back into the economy and, directly into the hands of retirees and other beneficiaries.
And it's interesting, the sources kind of trace how these total distribution numbers have increased over time. Like we saw earlier figures mentioned, wasn't it former Acting Commissioner Leland Dudek?
Yes, that's right.
Referencing around $14.8 billion about a month or so prior, as noted in the sources.
Yeah, exactly. And comparing that earlier figure, the $14.8 billion, to the latest $15.3 billion that's already distributed.
Right.
And then knowing there's another $6 billion coming, bringing the total over $21 billion, it vividly illustrates that this is an active, ongoing process. The money is steadily flowing out.
Okay, so we've established these payments are real. They're happening on a massive scale. Individuals are getting substantial average lump sums, representing money they were owed. But like you said, this isn't some random windfall. It's not like a lottery or a government bonus program.
No, not at all.
There's a very specific legislative reason behind all this.
Exactly. These payments are a direct consequence of specific legislation being passed and then signed into law. The driving force behind these back payments is the Social Security Fairness Act.
The Social Security Fairness Act.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the key piece of legislation here. And the sources, they detail its journey, right? Showing this wasn't just a sudden thing.
No, definitely not sudden. According to the sources, the act followed the standard legislative path. It passed through the House of Representatives late last year, specifically in November.
November, okay. Then it moved on to the Senate.
Yep, where it was passed in December.
And finally, it became law when?
It was signed into law by the president on January 5th of this year.
January 5th, 2024.
That's right. The sources mentioned there was a signing ceremony marking the official enactment of the law.
So the Social Security Fairness Act is now law. Okay. But what exactly did this act do that triggered these massive back payments for millions of people? What specific provisions did it target?
So at its core, the Social Security Fairness Act repealed two specific provisions that had, for a long time, affected certain Social Security beneficiaries. It repealed the Windfall Elimination Provision, usually known as WEP,
WEP, yeah, heard of that.
and the Government Pension Offset, known as GPO.
WEP and GPO. Okay, those are terms many people impacted are probably very familiar with. But for others, they might just sound like, alphabet soup.
Understandable.
How long had these provisions, WEP and GPO, actually been in effect? Were they recent?
No, far from it. The sources indicate that both WEP and GPO were very long-standing provisions. WEP had been in effect since the early 1980s.
Wow, the 80s.
While GPO was even older, dating back to 1977.
1977. So these were rules that had impacted people's benefits for, what, over 4 decades? Maybe approaching 50 years in some cases?
Exactly. Decades of impact.
Okay, decades of impact. And what exactly did WEP and GPO do to people's Social Security benefits? How did they work? Why were they controversial?
Well, the primary effect of both WEP and GPO was basically to reduce or offset the monthly Social Security benefits for specific groups of people.
Reduce benefits, okay.
The sources clarify this impacted approximately 3.2 million people, and these were typically individuals who had worked a portion of their careers in jobs that were not covered by Social Security.
Meaning they didn't pay Social Security taxes on that specific job income.
Correct. But they did earn a pension from that non-covered employment, often public sector jobs like teachers, firefighters, police in certain states or localities.
Got it. So they had a pension from a job outside Social Security. How did that affect their Social Security?
Well, WEP affected their own Social Security benefits that they earned through other covered employment. GPO, on the other hand, affected spousal or survivor benefits they might have been entitled to based on their spouse's Social Security record.
Okay, so WEP hit your own benefit. GPO hit benefits you might get from a spouse. And the idea was, what? Because they got this other pension, their Social Security was cut.
That was essentially the rationale, yes. The mechanics were different for WEP and GPO, but the result was a lower Social Security benefit check than someone in a similar situation who only had covered employment throughout their career.
How did the reduction actually work? Like, how did WEP lower the benefit?
For WEP, it modified the formula used to calculate a person's Social Security benefit. The standard formula is progressive, meaning it gives a higher percentage return on average lifetime earnings to lower earners.
Right.
WEP used a less favorable calculation for people who also had substantial earnings from non-covered work, effectively reducing the benefit amount they'd get based on their covered earnings.
So instead of getting the full benefit amount their covered work history would normally qualify them for, WEP knocked it down because they also had that non-covered pension on the side.
Exactly. It was originally designed decades ago to prevent what some perceived as double dipping, where someone might benefit fully from both a non-covered pension and a Social Security benefit, calculated as if Social Security was their only retirement income source. That was the original intent, anyway.
Okay, and GPO, how did that work?
GPO was maybe even more impactful for some. It reduced spousal or survivor benefits by 2/3 of the amount of the person's non-covered government pension.
2/3, wow.
Yeah. So, for example, if you were entitled to a Social Security spousal benefit based on your husband or wife's record, but you also receive, say, a $900 monthly pension from a teaching job not covered by Social Security, GPO would reduce your Social Security spousal benefit by 2/3 of that $900, which is $600.
So your spousal benefit check would be $600 lower each month.
Correct. Or potentially eliminated entirely if 2/3 of your non-covered pension was greater than or equal to the spousal benefit amount.
X. 2/3 of the non-covered pension could just wipe out the Social Security spousal or survivor benefit. That sounds like it could really significantly impact a household's retirement income plan.
It absolutely did. For potentially millions of spouses and survivors, especially women historically, GPO could completely eliminate their expected Social Security benefit. And you can imagine these provisions, WEP and GPO, they've been subjects of intense debate and advocacy for repeal for decades.
Yeah, I bet.
Many argued they unfairly penalized public servants, like we mentioned, teachers, firefighters, police officers, federal workers under the older CSRS system, people in states and localities that opted out of Social Security for those jobs way back when.
That historical context is definitely important.
Mm.
So for decades, people were pushing for the repeal of these provisions. Now, the Social Security Fairness Act has finally done it, repealed WEP and GPO this year. But why are people getting back payments, and why do they stretch all the way back into last year?
This is the key mechanism, the thing that explains these large lump sums we're seeing. The Social Security Fairness Act, even though it was signed into law on January 5th of this year,
Uh-huh.
it is explicitly retroactive.
Retroactive, meaning it applies to a time before the law was actually enacted.
Precisely. The law's effective date for the repeal of WEP and GPO is retroactive all the way back to January 1st of last year.
January 1st, 2023.
Correct. January 1st, 2023. This is a really crucial detail. It means that legally speaking, beneficiaries who were affected by WEP and GPO should have started receiving their full, unoffset, unreduced Social Security benefit amounts starting way back in January of last year. Their monthly checks should have been higher from that date forward.
Okay, I think I see. So because the law retroactively changed their benefit amount starting January 1st of last year, but their actual checks weren't increased until after the law passed this year, maybe March, April, May.
Yes, exactly. The difference between the higher amount they should have been receiving each month since January 1st of last year and the lower amount they actually received due to WEP or GPO still being in effect, that difference accumulated month after month.
Okay.
So these large back payments, these lump sums, are simply the Social Security Administration sending them the total sum of all those accumulated monthly differences. It's the money they were legally entitled to receive over the past year plus, but didn't get at the time.
So it's literally catching them up on over a year's worth of underpayments based purely on the retroactive start date of the new law.
Exactly right. It's not a bonus payment. It's not extra money. It's the payment of a debt, essentially, that accumulated because the repeal applies retroactively. And the sources help illustrate this. They mention the average monthly increase for affected individuals just from the repeal itself.
Right, you mentioned that. What was that figure again?
Cited around $360 per month on average.
Okay, $360 per month on average increase. So if you take that average monthly increase, $360, and you multiply it by the number of months from January 1st of last year until, let's say, May or June of this year, when maybe a lot of these payments went out.
Yeah, you can see how quickly it adds up. Multiply $360 by, say, 17 or 18 months.
Okay, 360 times 18. That's
You land squarely in the range of that average $6,710 lump sum we talked about earlier.
right around $6,500,
Yeah.
$6,800. Yeah.
So that average payment figure, it's basically the average total of those monthly increases just accumulating over that whole retroactive period. It shows the direct link. Retroactive date, monthly increase from repealing WGPO equals the large lump sum.
That makes it crystal clear. The size of the lump sum isn't arbitrary at all. It's just a direct function of the monthly benefit increase times the duration of that retroactive period until the payment is actually received.
It fully explains the back nature of the payments and the scale of them, tying it directly back to how the Social Security Fairness Act was designed.
Okay, fantastic. So we understand what these payments are and why they're happening. It's the retroactive repeal of WEP and GPO by the Fairness Act. Now, let's talk about who exactly is receiving them and, importantly, when this massive distribution process is expected to finally wrap up.
Right. So as we've discussed, these payments are specifically targeted at that group of approximately 3.2 million people whose monthly Social Security benefits, either their own benefit or spousal survivor benefits, were previously being reduced by either WEP or GPO.
Okay.
They are the direct beneficiaries of this legislative change.
So these are the individuals who will not only get this one-time lump sum back payment, but will also see their ongoing regular monthly benefits permanently increase going forward because WP and GPO are just gone now for them. Yeah.
Precisely. That's a key point. The back payment is a one-time catch-up, a correction for the past year plus. But the higher monthly benefit amount, that's a permanent change in their financial picture moving forward.
Okay. Now, while millions have already received their retroactive payments, that $15.3 billion already out the door, the sources indicate that there is still a remaining group waiting. What's the number cited for those still waiting?
The number cited is roughly 900,000 people.
900,000 people still waiting. Now, that sounds like a significant number, and it is, but as the source notes, it's actually a relatively small percentage when you think about the total Social Security beneficiary population, right? which is well over 60 million people.
That perspective is important, yeah.
Okay.
It's a substantial number in absolute terms. Nearly 1 million people is a lot of people.
Definitely.
But it is a defined subset of the total beneficiary population that the agency is now working to reach with these final payments.
And why are these remaining payments taking a bit longer? Why weren't they all just processed automatically back when the law passed?
Well, the sources explain that processing these remaining nearly 1 million payments requires a significant degree of manual intervention by Social Security staff.
Manual processing. In this day and age, for almost 1 million payments, that seems counterintuitive, maybe, given the scale we're talking about.
It does seem that way on the surface, but it really points to the complexity involved in these specific cases. For the individuals in this remaining group, it's likely that their records require a more detailed, hands-on review to accurately calculate the exact retroactive amount they're owed.
Why would that be?
Oh, it could be due to various complexities in their work history, maybe details about their non-covered pension, changes in their circumstances over the retroactive period, or maybe just the way their original WEP or GPO offset was initially applied in the system years ago.
Okay.
You know, automated systems can handle the straightforward calculations for millions relatively easily, but complex edge cases, unusual situations, they often require human review and adjustment to get it right.
That makes sense. You need a person to look at the nuances.
Exactly. And the sources even mention that Social Security is reportedly pulling staff from other areas within the agency
really?
to specifically prioritize and help expedite the processing and distribution of these particular manual payments.
Okay, so they are dedicating extra human resources, pulling people from other jobs to tackle this manual workload and try to speed things up. That definitely indicates a commitment to getting these last payments out efficiently.
It seems so, yes.
And does the agency provide a timeline? Is there a deadline for when these remaining 900,000 payments will be completed?
Yes. Thankfully, Acting Commissioner Frank Bisignano has provided a clear and pretty firm deadline. He stated publicly that all of these remaining back payments will be completely distributed by the end of this month.
By the end of June.
Okay.
Given that we are, as the sources noted, in early June now, that means the roughly 900,000 people still waiting can expect their payments within, the next 3 weeks or so?
That's the target the agency has publicly set for itself. And the source's perspective on this is that hitting this deadline is pretty important, as it will effectively wrap up this specific phase of implementing the WEP-GPO repeal. It allows the conversation around these specific back payments to kind of move toward completion.
Right. Getting that last $6 billion out the door by the end of June, that's a concrete goal. So, okay, that covers the back payments themselves and their distribution timeline. What should people who are affected, or maybe just those interested in Social Security generally, expect looking ahead now?
Well, probably the most significant ongoing impact for those 3.2 million beneficiaries is, as we mentioned, the permanent increase in their monthly Social Security benefits.
Right, the ongoing checks.
The back payment was crucial. It corrected the past year, but going forward, every single month, they will continue to receive that higher unoffset amount. That's a lasting improvement in their financial security.
That's a really important point to keep reiterating. The lump sum is great, maybe how it helps pay off bills or provides a cushion, but that sustained increase in monthly income provides genuine long-term financial stability.
Absolutely. And, you know, the sources raise kind of an interesting point regarding those 900,000 payments that are still pending distribution this month.
Oh, what's that?
They suggest there's actually a strong possibility that the average retroactive payment amount for this remaining group could actually end up being higher than the $6,710 average we discussed for the group that has already been paid.
Higher. Why would the average payment be larger for the people who are getting theirs later? That seems counterintuitive again.
The reasoning, as the sources outline it, is actually pretty straightforward, and it ties directly back to that retroactive effective date of the law, January 1st of last year.
Okay.
Since the repeal was effective back then, every single month that passes before a person receives their retroactive lump sum payment adds another month's worth of that benefit increase, that roughly $360 average, to their accumulated total.
Ah, okay. So as someone who got their payment back in, say, April, received maybe 16 months worth of retroactive pay calculated into their lump sum.
Right.
Then someone receiving theirs at the very end of June will get, around 18 months worth included in their lump sum calculation.
Exactly. The longer the processing takes for an individual case within this time frame, the more months of accumulated owed back pay get added into their final lump sum check.
So the math just works out that way.
Correct. Therefore, the average for the remaining 900,000 people who are receiving their payments later in this distribution cycle is likely to be somewhat higher on average than the group who received theirs earlier this year.
Interesting. Did the sources give any potential figures?
Yeah, they cited some hypothetical figures based on this accumulating effect, suggesting the average for this remaining group could rise from that overall $6,110 mark to something like maybe $6,822, or potentially even reaching into the $7,800 plus range, depending on the exact distribution timing within June.
Wow, potentially over $700-800 on average for this last group.
Yep.
So for those still waiting, while the delay is undoubtedly frustrating,
Must be, yeah.
their eventual lump sum might actually be even larger on average as a result of that delay. That's a significant potential outcome to keep in mind.
It is. It's a direct consequence of the timing of the payments relative to the retroactive start date when the higher benefits officially began accruing.
And the sources also noted the importance of just staying updated in the current environment,
Right.
mentioning that interesting or potentially significant events or announcements might be anticipated in the near future, possibly even within the next week or so.
Yes, the landscape related to Social Security and fiscal policy in general, it's constantly evolving, as you know. The sources suggest that given the current environment, just staying informed about potential new developments or announcements is probably prudent. Wrapping up these WP-GPO payments is a major milestone for the agency.
For sure.
But there may well be other issues or discussions emerging soon that are worth paying attention to.
Which is precisely why we do these deep dives, right? To try and help you navigate this constant flow of information. We'll certainly continue to monitor the official sources and keep you informed about any significant developments related to Social Security as they arise.
Absolutely. Our goal is always to provide you with the key insights so you're not caught off guard and can understand the implications of these changes.
Okay, great. So let's try and tie all of this back to you, the listener. When we step back, what's the ultimate impact of these back payments and the repeal of WEP and GPO?
Well, the core impact really is a substantial positive financial correction for millions of people. It's money that was previously being withheld or reduced due to these long-standing controversial provisions,
Right.
and it's now being paid out. First as a significant lump sum to catch people up, and then critically as that permanent increase in their ongoing monthly retirement income. For the 3.2 million affected individuals, this represents a really meaningful improvement in their financial well-being.
Yeah, it's undeniably great news for those specific individuals who were impacted by WP and GPO for all those years. The sources also, they briefly acknowledged that while this is fantastic for the recipients, it may be understandable that others who aren't in this group might feel, well, the source used the phrase, a little jealous.
Mm-hmm. That reaction is probably quite natural, right?
Right.
When you hear about billions of dollars being distributed and large individual payments going out, if it doesn't directly apply to your own situation, it's easy to feel that way, perhaps.
Yeah.
It just highlights that changes within a vast, complex system like Social Security, even changes that are intended to correct previous policies deemed unfair, can resonate very differently across the wider population.
Absolutely. Social Security touches so many lives in so many different ways. So we definitely encourage you listening to consider your own situation, perhaps the situations of people you know, parents, friends, former colleagues who might be affected by this change. Does this information spark any questions for you?
Yeah, what stands out?
We're always keen to hear what resonates or what you'd like to understand, maybe in more detail down the road.
Your engagement really helps us understand what aspects are most relevant and impactful out there.
We truly value that input.
Yeah.
So just to recap the absolute key points of this deep dive one last time.
Okay. The central message is significant Social Security back payments are actively being distributed right now. They're averaging over $6,700 per person, going out to approximately 3.2 million people.
Right. And this is the direct result of the Social Security Fairness Act finally repealing the Windfall Elimination Provision, WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, GPO,
Correct.
which had previously reduced benefits for these individuals, often for decades.
Billions have already been paid out. That specific figure was $15.3 billion so far. And the remaining amount, roughly $6 billion, covering about 900,000 people, is scheduled to be completely distributed by the end of this month, June. That's according to the Social Security Acting Commissioner.
And critically, maybe the most important long-term point, beyond that retroactive lump sum payment, these affected beneficiaries will continue to receive permanently higher monthly Social Security benefits every month going forward.
That's the lasting change.
It really is a major financial event, correcting these decades-old controversial policies. Now, to leave you with a final thought-provoking question based on our deep dive today, something to mull over.
Okay. Considering the detail we explored about those approximately 900,000 remaining payments that specifically require manual processing by Social Security staff.
Right, the ones taking longer. What is the necessity for manual processing of nearly 1 million individual payments? In our modern, supposedly automated era, what does that tell us about the inherent scale, the complexity, and maybe the legacy systems involved in managing a program is absolutely vast and critical to national financial security as Social Security?
Yeah, it really prompts reflection, doesn't it, on the immense administrative challenge of just overseeing a system that impacts tens of millions of lives daily and requires such precise, individualized calculations for an incredibly diverse range of personal circumstances and work histories built up over lifetimes.
A truly complex, massive undertaking, no doubt about it. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Social Security back payments. We really hope this has clarified what's happening, why it's happening, and why it's so significant for millions.
And we appreciate you spending this time with us to become better informed. We'll keep sifting through the information, monitoring the developments, and continue to bring you the key insights as they emerge.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to really understanding what's going on, taking huge amounts of information and boiling it down just for you. And today, wow, we have an electrifying financial story. It's about money that's literally putting thousands of dollars into people's bank accounts, like right now. We're talking about a really significant financial benefit here, a substantial windfall, you could say, that's making a real positive difference for millions of people across the country. So listening to this, you might be thinking, okay, thousands, a windfall. How exactly are these big sums? I heard some are nearly $7,000. How are they just showing up for beneficiaries? And maybe the bigger questions are, am I going to get one? How do I get a payment like this? Or maybe other benefits? Well, guess what? You are absolutely in the right place. Our mission today is to really unpack the what, the why, and the how behind these major financial benefits. We want to give you a clear, concise path to understanding how you can potentially unlock some serious financial value.
And that's through, maybe unexpected payments like these, but also by making the most of benefits you already have. So let's just dive right in. Where is this money actually hitting? The most immediate thing, the really exciting part, is that these large retroactive payments, we're talking significant amounts. They are literally arriving in bank accounts as we speak. It's not a small thing. We're talking millions of beneficiaries nationwide getting thousands upon thousands of dollars. And this isn't just, chatter, it's confirmed. The Social Security Acting Commissioner, Frank Bassignano, he actually highlighted this himself in a recent interview. He really stressed the urgency, the commitment behind getting this done. And he made it crystal clear. By the very end of this month, millions more people will finally have these substantial funds right there in their bank accounts, deposited directly. And here's the kicker, the really urgent part. June, this month. It is the absolute final month these specific payments are scheduled to go out.
So if you think you might be due one, or maybe you know someone who could be, now is really the critical time to pay attention and make sure you get what you're owed.
That's absolutely right. And just to give everyone a better sense of the scale we're talking about here, the average payment, the typical amount hitting accounts, it's a noticeable $6,710.
Wow, $6,710 on average.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, some individuals are seeing amounts described as, nearly $7,000. So these aren't trivial sums.
Definitely not.
No, they're quite substantial, really designed to make up for benefits that were affected previously. Now, the actual rollout, the distribution, that kicked off in the last few days of February.
Okay, so it's been underway for a few months then.
Precisely. The first waves hit accounts back then, and since that time, they've already successfully delivered a remarkable 2.3 million payments.
2.3 million already out. That's huge progress.
It is. It's provided immediate financial relief, a significant boost for those individuals, but there's still a considerable number left. We're looking at roughly maybe around 1 million people who are still on the list to receive these payments.
1 million more to go.
Okay.
Why the delay for them?
Well, the Social Security Administration, the SSA, they've been quite open about this. They've explained that many of these remaining cases fall into what they call complicated situations.
Complicated. What does that usually mean in this context? Is it a problem for the beneficiary?
Not necessarily a problem for them, no. It usually means the case just needs a bit more, let's say, manual review due to some unique factors. For instance, someone might have a complex work history. Maybe they worked jobs covered by Social Security and jobs that weren't. perhaps in different states or even internationally. That takes extra verification.
Ah, okay. So checking records across different systems, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Or maybe someone had previous interactions with Social Security that need careful cross-referencing. Or perhaps they have pension income from a non-covered job, and that needs manual confirmation to calculate the retroactive payment accurately. These details just mean the processing takes a little longer. They want to be absolutely sure the calculation is right for everyone.
Makes sense. Accuracy is key with these amounts.
Absolutely. But here's the really reassuring part, and this comes straight from the top, from the new acting commissioner, Frank Basignano. His confirmation back in May really underscores the agency's focus here. He has stated quite unequivocally that these payments will be completely sent out and deposited by the end of June. The hard deadline, no exceptions, is July 1st.
Okay, a firm deadline. That's good to hear.
It is. And it's not just talk. It reflects a really deep commitment from the SSA. They are actively reallocating resources internally, shifting staffing around, making this distribution the #1 priority. We're talking about a significant effort. They are literally pulling people from other tasks, other duties within Social Security Department.
Really? Pulling people off other work?
Yes, even if it means other administrative things get temporarily reprioritized, the focus is laser sharp on getting these specific payments out the door and into people's hands as quickly and efficiently as possible. It just demonstrates a really